So, to the extent that anything at all could be deciphered from that debate last night, and I don't even want to even refer to it as a debate, it's more a thing that lacks any precise terminology. So, in watching that thing last night, what we're all supposed to be fixated upon, what we're all supposed to be terrified by, what we're all supposed to be debating frenetically and maniacally at the moment is the portion toward the end of the debate when Chris Wallace decided it would be a great idea to barrage Trump with the very style of questioning that Chris Wallace knew Trump would be extremely averse to, which is this whole formulation of, will you, Donald Trump, disavow this or that supporter? And I think the main reason why Trump responds negatively to such questions is because those questions are almost always posed in bad faith. What does it accomplish to disavow or denounce or condemn? Almost nothing, except to give the media inquisitioners additional fodder so they can examine whether Trump was strident enough in his ostensible denunciation so that they can then come up with additional examples of groups or individuals that Trump must additionally denounce. And it's just an entire charade that is so tedious and so worthless in terms of informational value that I frankly don't blame Trump for balking at the legitimacy of such inquiries. And I would say the same thing, generally speaking, if other politicians or presidential candidates were constantly badgered into disavowing this or that. It's just a ritual that we're all supposed to go through and impute with importance that doesn't exist. But last night, the big takeaway is now supposed to be not that the debate itself, and again, you can't even really call that anything resembling a debate, but that thing was not that it was this manifestation of decadent gerontocracy or that the political system itself is clearly in terminal decline if this is what it produces. No, it's that Trump now is commanding white supremacist militias or racist terrorist groups to take to the streets in the event that he loses the election and do what? I don't know exactly. Mow down black people? Something along those lines. That's the fantastical interpretation put forward by the media commentators who are extremely insensitive at that particular line. And so I think it's worth parsing it at least to a minimal degree. And so I'm just going to play you the audio here because I'm technologically inept and I want to do a live stream and don't necessarily want to set up the whole infrastructure where I can play video simultaneously. But here we go. Here's the portion, and just listen to it. Listen to it reasonably carefully, and then we can get into why it's farcical that now this is transformed into such a major issue.
Criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland.
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared to
do
specifically
that, but
do it? Well,
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it. Do you want to call them? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and white supremacists and right
Proud Boys. Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left.
Okay, so that's all we need to hear when Trump says stand back and stand by. That's the, smoking gun line that has everybody in a tizzy. But you'll notice that the one who introduced the formulation of stand down was Chris Wallace. He was asking Trump to call on these unnamed groups to stand down. So Trump asked, who are you talking about? Who are you demanding exactly that I call on to stand down? And then Biden mentions the Proud Boys. I mean, it's hilarious that Biden would have even the awareness to know remotely what the Proud Boys are about or how significant they are. But Biden interjects with Proud Boys, and then Trump says, Proud Boys stand back. Whatever that means exactly, that was just Trump putting his little garbled twist on the formulation stand down introduced by Chris Wallace. It wasn't as if Trump got up there out of nowhere and said, I hereby call on the Proud Boys and other blah, blah, blah white supremacist groups to await my further instruction as to what form of street chaos they should undertake in the aftermath of the election. It was a construction that Chris Wallace put out there and that Joe Biden aided along. And so why might you be reluctant to issue a blanket condemnation of white supremacists? Well, I can tell you from personal experience that I am frequently declared to be a white supremacist now. And I think that mostly because I occasionally appear on Fox News. Fox News is deemed to be a white supremacist propaganda network. And so me going on, even though nothing I articulate ever while on Fox News could, by any stretch of the imagination, be construed as an endorsement of white supremacy, I'm nonetheless labeled a white supremacist by countless people online, and including some in the media. Now, I've never, on Fox News or anywhere, endorsed anything conceivably associated with white supremacy. I mean, it's absurd. And yet that label gets applied to me. So, if the definition of white supremacist has been so diluted, so stretched beyond recognition, and could even apply given this new anti-racism framework that we've been inundated with, mostly since the George Floyd events, you're a white supremacist, apparently, if you aren't engaging in anti-racism advocacy as defined by the proponents of this new ideology. So, I mean, if this were 20 years ago and white supremacist was generally accepted to refer to people who actually affirmed the supremacy of whites, the inherent racial superiority of whites, then I could see it making sense to simply denounce anybody associated with the term white supremacists. But that's clearly not the rhetorical or discursive function of the term nowadays, which is why I think Trump asked, hey, be more specific. And then they ring is the Proud Boys. I mean, for the Proud Boys to have now gotten into a presidential debate, and frankly, the most important presidential debate in all likelihood, because the first debate tends to be the most watched debate. Because people are sort of curious to see what it looks like for both candidates to finally be in one another's presence. It's the height of absurdity. I mean, I tweeted out a video that I had originally tweeted over a year ago when there was a Proud Boy, I don't know, gathering of some kind. And one of them recorded a clip of their initiation ritual where it's a bunch of guys. They look like dopey fraternity brothers who maybe read a couple of blog posts and watched a couple of YouTube videos and now decided that they're Proud Boys. And they think that they're defending, I don't know, Western civilization or something. And the initiation ritual that they participate in is that the guy who wants to now become a Proud Boy says, I'm a Proud Boy. And then he's surrounded by a bunch of other guys who start punching him in that frat bro kind of way. And then his task is to apparently state the name of 5 breakfast cereals as he's being punched. So that's the Proud Boys. Those are the white supremacist fascist groups, or one example of them, that now we're supposed to believe are going to execute some kind of fascist takeover at the behest of Trump. I mean, it's just beyond ludicrous. And it's all the more ludicrous to me because, as you know, I spent 2 months going around the country and looking at the aftermath of the riots. And I think that there is a right-wing misrepresentation often of what Antifa is. Antifa doesn't have a centralized command structure. The FBI director, Wray, is right when he said it's more of an idea than an organization. And frankly, Biden was right about that. Doesn't mean that there aren't any Antifa groups. Doesn't mean that they don't have a coordinated organizational capacity in certain respects, especially in the Pacific Northwest, I would say. But sometimes it can be a little bit exaggerated as to what exactly Antifa is. But nonetheless, Antifa or not, there were people espousing the ideology of insurrectionary anarchism who went around and instigated the most widespread and destructive riots and the costliest riots in at least 50 years. This happened just a few months ago, and it's still arguably going on. So why are we, in light of that, however precisely you define Antifa and their organizational structure, why are we fixating on the Proud Boys and these other trivial, allegedly white supremacist groups in terms of the danger they pose? Who was it that wrought the destruction over the course of the summer of 2020? It generally was not right-wing groups. It was insurrectionary, revolutionary anarchists who then get latched onto by people with less defined motives that maybe aren't straightforwardly political. They have some they are just opportunistic and take advantage of the chaos to loot, to break windows, whatever. So all that happened recently, and yet now we're all supposed to think that the main scourge are these white supremacist groups. I mean, there have always been lone crazies who maybe have some vague attachment to one another in terms of how they communicate. I mean, I guess an example would be the El Paso shooting from August of 2019. Clearly, the person who perpetrated that had racially inflammatory views. So, no, I think it's silly to deny that those people exist, but to refer to them as this nationwide, like militarized, coherent organization who, at the drop of a hat, or who, based on one tweet from Trump, will just come out on the streets and help facilitate a coup, that's just the projection of psychological angst on the part of elites who almost feel a sense of validation by stoking this sort of paranoia. And it's almost, 99.9% of this is just divorced from reality. And that reality might have been more apparent to the people now commenting on it if they bothered to take the time to go around and observe the ramifications of these riots that occurred in the past several months. Their ignorance, their willful ignorance of what transpired as a result of those actions now informs their continued willful ignorance with respect to who is really worth keeping an eye on after the 2020 election. And is it conceivable that you'll have some right-wingers doing some crazy stuff? Yeah, but that's always been the case. If 2020 is defined by anything, it's not exactly that. It's whoever was responsible for these riots and chaos. And that wasn't the right. So Trump was correct about that. The problem with Trump is that he articulates everything in such an incendiary and garbled way that you almost have to have a separate sort of interpretive mode of analysis to comprehend what he's saying a lot of the time. And I just don't know if that's necessarily what voters are craving at this juncture. But it doesn't detract from the fundamental salience of the point that he raises there. So, I guess we're going to have a month's worth of news cycles related to the supposedly looming civil war. And then if it doesn't happen, which, come on, let's be honest, it ain't happening. I don't usually make predictions, but I will predict now that we will not have a civil war after the 2020 election. And I will eat crow if that turns out to happen. If we were somehow go back to 1865, then man, I'll look stupid. But Civil War 2.0, I don't think is on the offing. And if we have some sporadic incidents that turn into viral videos, that's not a civil war. So that will not disprove the prediction that I just made. Okay, people, I just announced on Twitter today that I will be going to some swing states. I did the same thing in October next month, and I did the same thing in October of 2016 when I went and visited some electorally important areas to get a better sense of what the election outcome would be. And I feel that gave me some useful insights that I still draw upon today in terms of 2016. And I did it in some variation, albeit with less of a specific electoral emphasis over the summer with the riots. And I'll be doing that again this coming month, October. The first stop will be Pennsylvania. And so, as always, I appreciate if you value anything that I do to consider a contribution. And that'll do for now. Stay safe, stay cool. Talk to you later.